Welcome everybody to this series on improving customer lifetime value with machine learning. Now, this is only the first of a four-part series that will discuss all the phases of the customer journey and the ways, at least some of the ways, that machine learning can help during each phase. And today for phase one, we'll be talking about awareness and consideration phase. Now for today, we'll go through a very brief, I promise, round of introductions, and then we'll be talking about the customer journey, the part one, awareness and consideration. We'll have a case study. We'll see how machine learning can actually support your awareness and consideration marketing efforts. And finally, we'll talk briefly, we'll introduce part two of this series. I am Francesco Sguanci, and I lead the data science team here at Dunn Solutions. We are a digital commerce and business transformation consultancy. We have been in business since 1989 and are headquartered in Chicago. However, we also have offices in Minneapolis and Bangalore, India. Now, our business model is to deliver velocity to our client. And you may remember back from your Physics 101 that velocity is really a combination of direction and speed. Now, we provide direction through our analytics services and speed to market by helping clients automate their business process. We truly are a 360-degree digital commerce and transformation consultancy because in addition to providing analytics and marketing automation solutions, we also help clients integrate them in their digital platform of choice. And then from there, the cycle starts all over again. So we do help with all the stages of this process. And in fact, we refer to this process as the virtuous cycle of customer engagement. So, as I promised, that was a very brief introduction, and now we'll start talking about the customer journey. Now, this is the way that we like to think about the customer journey. It is a path that the consumer goes through. And you can see that there are exit arrows at any phase, any point of this path. So the consumer can disengage with your company at any time. And generally speaking, the further along this path the consumer is, the more costly it is when they leave. And I think we'll be discussing this in a different presentation when we talk about loyalty and advocacy phases. But for now, in addition to all these phases, we also have, or at least the way that we see it, is that the customer journey is divided into two stages, the pre-purchase stage and the post-purchase stage. Now, the intrinsic value, the money, it belongs to this phase, to the post-purchase phase. However, if you don't execute this phase correctly, right, the customer will never enter this stage. So this is just as important as this one. Now, there are many machine learning or predictive analytics methodologies that can be used at different stages and phases of the customer journey, right? And I wish I could tell you that there's only one very well-defined approach for every phase or for every step, but it's not that way, really. The methodologies can be used for multiple phases. It really depends on your type of business and the problem that you're trying to solve. And that's why you really need to make sure that you select a solution that is customized to the unique needs of your business. Now, this pre-purchase stage is really your chance to influence the subject, right, or the subjects, and steer them towards your product or service. And some of the things that machine learning can help you with are segmenting your market of interest, measure the effectiveness of your current marketing tactics, optimize your marketing spend, pricing your products correctly, and to an extent, even understand how consumers feel about your brand. But remember, please remember, your machine learning solution should be designed around your type of business your target audience, and your data availability. Advertising and marketing have always been a key tool for building awareness and consideration in consumers, right? But sales are complex. To me, I compare them to a chocolate milkshake. You know when they're good, but do you really know the amount of goodness that each ingredient contributes? And how much of that ingredient is needed to reach this level of goodness? And could I get an even better shake if I were to change the proportion of some of the ingredients? So let me give you a more practical example. Say that you are a fashion retailer, okay, and you want to promote sales of a certain designer's new, let's call it floral pink dress. Now, to make customers aware of the new dress, you run some TV ads. Now, on a given day, let's say that you have 4 customers, 1, 2, 3, and 4, walking into your store. Now, these 2 couples, they just happen to walk by. I don't know, it's springtime, they're outside, they're shopping around for new dresses, whatever the case is. So they check out a few of them and they end up buying this one. Great. Now, these sales, arguably, that would have happened with or without advertising. So we call them base sales, like natural sales that would have happened anyway. Now, on the other hand, these are the 2 ladies. Well, that's a different story, right? They saw the ad, the TV ad, and they came in only because they saw the ad, they liked the dress, and they wanted to buy that specific dress. Now, these are sales due only to marketing. Without the TV campaign, the TV ad, these sales would not have happened. Now, unfortunately, usually your point of sale, right, your point of sales device, well, it does not distinguish between the 2 of them. They cannot tell what sales came from people that just walked by and sales that came from people that saw an ad on TV, right? You don't ask people, oh, where did you see, why are you shopping today? So the analyst, when you're trying to do some analysis, you're really blind to what is what. Now, fortunately, we have machine learning that can help exactly with that. So let me give you an actual example of how machine learning can help through a real case study. Now, the methodology that we use for this case study is known as marketing mix modeling, or sometimes attribution modeling, although I will point out at the end of this presentation that they're not the same. As always, I will keep the name of the client confidential. However, the case study is a real assignment that we worked on, and the numbers are real. So Milk-Away manufactures milk-based snacks and products, and one of the best sellers is the smoothie, which has sales of approximately 99 million per year. Now, last year the company spent roughly 7.1 million on marketing only to promote this specific product. In addition to having in-store temporary price reductions, they also invested on TV and radio ads, and also on digital display and Google and paid search, basically pay-per-click. Now, we all know that advertising is a key ingredient, if not the key ingredient, to creating awareness in consumers. But when you spend this much on advertising, you start getting pressure to prove that it's returning some kind of profit. And that's what we were tasked to do, measuring the return on their marketing investment. So the first thing that we did was to align weekly historical sales, 3 years of historical sales, and their marketing efforts. So here you can see the historical sales in gray, and here you can see the number of TV ads that they ran on that given week, the amount of discount that they gave, whether or not they ran some radio ads, pay-per-click, digital impressions, and so forth. This is because we want to be able to visualize what went on historically. Now, at this point, we created a marketing mix model that separated base sales, and we defined them in the previous slide as sales that would have happened anyway from incremental sales, which are sales that would not have happened without that specific marketing tactic. Now, as you can see here, our algorithm was able to separate what we call the base sales, what we think are the sales that would have happened no matter what, in gray, from the sales that only happened, these spikes, these colorful spikes, because there was some kind of marketing activity going on during that week. So now that we were able to separate them mathematically, so what we did was to take the most current year and divide all incremental sales by total sales. And as we can see in the chart, roughly 10.4% of all the sales for that year were really incremental. It means that the company would not have had them had it not been for the money they spent on advertising. Now, the column chart, what it does, it tells us the contribution of each marketing tactic to that 10.4%. Now, notice that right here, I called out paid search, pay-per-click, which has the second highest contribution after TV. And also, I called out radio, which has the smallest impact, only 4.7% contribution on all incremental sales. Now, if you were to end the analysis right here, you might say, aha, I would say paid search is really effective, it works, and radio doesn't. Maybe you should stop wasting money on radio. And that would be incorrect. Because once we take into account how much we spent on each tactic to generate those incremental sales, basically we divide incremental sales, because once we take into account how much we spent on each tactic to generate those incremental sales, so basically we divide the incremental sales by how much we spent to generate those sales, then we see a completely different story. If you look at radio, it is true that radio contributed only $466,000, but we also spent only $220,000 to generate that $466,000. So basically, that means that we got $2.12 back in sales for every $1 we spent on advertising. On the other hand, even though search generated a lot of revenue, $2.08 million, we had to spend more than that to generate that. In fact, we only got 59 cents back in incremental sales for every dollar that we spent on pay-per-click advertising. Well, okay, great. So if you were to end the analysis right here, now you would say, then search is not being profitable. Maybe we should just spend everything on radio. No, I never said the search is not working, but is it possible that maybe we're just spending too much on it? Is it possible that it's not working at this level of spending? And that's what the next slide is going to tell us. One of the outputs of our marketing mix model is what we call the efficiency curves. Every marketing tactic, so this would be paid search, radio. Every marketing tactic has an efficiency curve that describes how consumers behave at different levels of advertising, of marketing spend. First dollar spent on marketing usually generate a lot of sales. But as you keep spending more and more, then the curve gets flatter and flatter. And every additional dollar that you invest generates fewer and fewer sales. Now, every curve has an optimal point, after which what you spend is usually more than what you take in. And here you can see that the optimal recommended point for paid search is roughly $700,000. Now we're spending over $3.2 million. So it shouldn't be any surprise that paid search at that level of spend is not really returning any money. Now, on the other hand, radio, you can see that the optimal point for radio is around 900, maybe $1 million, right? But we're only spending $200,000. So obviously, there's still room to increase the investment, increase the spend on radio. Now, these are great findings because they're very actionable. Simply reduce the spend by $2.8 million, take $700,000 from paid search and reallocate it onto radio. Simple, no? In reality, there's no way you could ever carry this out manually, at least in no efficient way that I'm aware of. I only showed you 2 marketing channels and how to reallocate across them. But what if you had, say, 4? And by the way, we usually have more than 4. We even have 6 or 8. What if you have multiple products? Or better yet, what if you have constraints given to you by the client? For example, say that what if you want to optimize profits, but you can't spend any less than what you're currently spending, say, on TV? I don't know. Maybe you have signed a contract with your media agency and you still have a year to go, right? Or something like that. And you have a contract that says you have to spend at least $500,000 per year. And I'm just making up a number. Now, then the problem becomes to get the maximum profit within these constraints. And for all these combinations, to accommodate all these constraints, you need an optimizer. Let me show you how an optimizer works, and the one that we created for this client. Now, realistically, I'm going to show it to you in Excel because it's simpler to illustrate, but this is done in either one of the great machine learning platforms such as AWS, or it can be done in Python or in other platforms, but certainly not in Excel. But again, for the sake of this presentation and for simplicity, let me explain it to you in Excel. Now, the simulation we're about to run is completely unconstrained. So what that means is that we're not bound by any limitations given by budget, internal politics, anything at all. Like I was saying before, what if you must spend a certain amount of money on, say, TV ads because you have a contract with your media agency? Well, this is not what we're doing here. Right here, all we're saying is, if I could do anything I want, okay, how much should I spend on each of these 4 marketing channels, tactics, to optimize my profit? Now, in the first chart, you see how much the company is spending right now. So overall, they're spending roughly $7 million in marketing and $3.5 million on paid search, 1.3 on digital, a little bit on radio, and roughly $2 million on TV. Now, you can also see how much profit they're getting back. And you can see that television is very profitable, but then radio, so. And paid search is not profitable at all. In fact, they're losing money. And we saw it a couple of slides earlier. For every dollar that they are spending right now at this level of spend, they only get 59 cents back in incremental sales. Maybe they're spending too much. So this optimizer should give us the right level that they should be spending on each of these tactics if they want to maximize profit. So if we click on optimize, and these are the results. Now, the first great insight is right here. Actually, a profit is not maximized when you spend $7 million. You can spend $5.1 million, so $2 million less, and still optimize profit. That's a pretty big takeaway, right? And you can see that you're spending more or less the right amount of money on television. Probably you should be spending more on radio. This is the optimal spend, what we recommend. Digital is fine, and paid search, you're spending way too much, $3.5 million, when we think that you should be spending $700,000. And if you were spending $700,000, instead of losing money, you'd be making a little bit of profit. And that's exactly what the optimizer is supposed to do for you. If the model, machine learning model, is a good model, you should be able to find the optimal point, the optimal amount you should spend on each of these tactics. Now, for this specific client, that was just an optimization scenario that we ran, and that was the unconstrained one, the first one, where budget is not an issue. So if we tell you spend $6 million more, right? You have no problem, you have no constraints, you can do that. All you want to know is, if I had all the resources, okay, what would be the amount that I should be spending? The second one that we ran for this client is assuming that we have to keep the budget the same, okay, but we want to increase our profit, okay? Can you run that scenario for us? And finally, the third one is, how much can we expect to make? How do we maximize profit if we were to cut $1 million across all marketing units? And here you can see what the expected outcome based on our statistical model, what it would have been for each one of these. They can increase profit by up to 188%, which means a return on investment of $1.74 for every dollar spent on advertising. Or for the same budget, if they decide not to cut, as per our unconstrained recommendation, they could go to 1.48 or 1.66 if they were to cut $1 million across all marketing tactics. Now, the client, obviously, they pay us for this, right? They implemented our strategy, and this is what happened. Now, for the sake of consistency, we reran the same methodology at the end of the year, but obviously, we used the most recent sales data. A simple budget reallocation increased their revenue by $2.4 million, which translates in 29% increase in profit. And what was the cost to them? Well, it was the cost of paying for this study and really just a few phone calls that they had to make to their media agency to change the spend allocation. Now, a word of caution. First of all, as I said, what I just presented is just one of the many methodologies that can be used at this stage of the customer journey. Second, and specific to this topic of measuring return on marketing investment, some people use the term marketing mix modeling and attribution modeling interchangeably. They're not the same. What I presented is marketing mix, and usually works best for mass market merchandising. It also works best when for offline channels. So offline channels are TV, billboards, radio ads, direct mail, flyers, coupons, and so forth. Now, the further you segment your market, so if your product is really specific to a certain market segment, or if you have a lot of digital channels, well, then marketing mix modeling may not be the right technique. Maybe attribution modeling is better for you. Now, I can't really go into detail about the differences between attribution modeling and marketing mix modeling because, like I said, this presentation is more about giving you an example of how machine learning can be used in support of your efforts to increase awareness and consideration. However, I strongly invite you to check out my blog on the difference between marketing mix modeling and attribution modeling if you're even considering this kind of analysis. And there should be a link in the description below. Machine learning, if you know what you're doing, can work really great in support of your efforts to increase awareness and consideration in consumers. And again, it can lead to maximum profit. All right, so feel free to contact us if you're thinking about using machine learning to support your marketing efforts to increase awareness and consideration. Usually I give a free assessment, and what I do is I try and understand what your business needs are, and then I want to see what you're already doing, how we can improve on that, and also what kind of data you have to support this kind of effort. And then if you do have the data, and this is all free of charge, I will develop a comprehensive strategy, and then you can decide whether or not you want to proceed. So please feel free to contact us, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Now, once the customer has the intent to buy, right, he or she is ready to become part of the value creation stage. Now, during the next presentation, I will be defining the customer lifetime value, which is the future profits that a customer is expected to generate over the course of his or her tenure. Now, during that presentation, we'll see how machine learning can aid with the acquisition phase. So a customer has an intent to buy. What do you do? How can machine learning help you convince them to actually buy your product instead of that the competitors? How do you make them take that final leap of faith? And that's exactly the topic for the next discussion. I hope you found this presentation interesting, and I hope you will join me for the next one. Thank you very much for your attention.